final speaker is Mark Thomas. He's an architect and director of Goodhouse Architecture and over 30 years experience in the design industry. He's 16 of those specialising in sustainable architecture. I know there's also some excellent videos of Goodhouse already on the web, so you can follow up and watch those later if they're not covered in this presentation. Welcome. How much does it all cost?
Thanks, Beck. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. I feel like we're all singing from the same songbook, so that's good. I'll get started because I'm keen to get through everything within 15 minutes. I'll do my very best, and I'll try and stay on topic. And I've also got a door prize. It's not a bottle of wine, but it's an apple.
It's healthier.
I've actually got a coffee voucher here too. So there. I was going to say how you all doing, but Ken, you do that so well, so I won't do that. Why build with sustainability, regeneration in mind? A while ago, it used to be an ethical decision, but everybody accepted it was going to cost a whole lot more. And so when I first came into this space, the clients were very few and far between, and they had to have lots of money. Things are changing, and as we're hearing, it is now becoming a more economically viable proposition, which is fantastic. This is why we do it. I think the term climate crisis is not too harsh. I think that's where we're at, and we need to face that. Hopefully in the future, everyone will recognise that, including our legislation, and we'll all have to do it. It's not actually that hard. Yeah, thanks, Ken. So I'm going to sort of sit around that point there about the economics. That's what I've been asked to talk about. And at Goodhouse, we do keep a really close connection with our Goodhouse builders and economics. So I really think I've got a reasonable idea about what things cost. When I was first asked to speak about this topic, how much does it all cost? I got so excited and I leapt into my spreadsheet and started to, do a house that was approximately 180 square metres and then work out what, you can make numbers look like anything, I decided. So I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is talk briefly about a couple of things that I think you need to think about and consider if you are thinking about the proposition of building either a sustainable home or going with the standard fare, a standard home. So just a couple of thought bubbles around that. First of all, what happens if we don't do this? I've said the word climate crisis already, and I don't want to wave my red flag too much, but here's the door prize. Name of band and album. Who said? It's Midnight Oil. Well done. You could get the apple. Do you know the album? You want the coffee voucher? Okay. Do you know what? That's it. You've got it. No, that's okay. No one knows the name of the album? Beds of Burning? No. Goodness me, I'm feeling old. No, it's not 1098. Not Diesel and Dust. I'm using up valuable seconds here, folks. Red Sails in the Sunset. Doesn't matter. It's a great album. Have a listen. They've been banging the drum for a long time in oil, so bless them. So what happens if we do what we can? Well, as I said, it's really, really hard to know the actual cost differences. But let's just look at something, a concept first, and it's about comparing apples with apples. So if we look at a green build and a standard build, we need to make sure that we are comparing apples with apples. Quite often I'll get people coming to our office and they're doing research. People do research. I mean, some of you sitting there today might be looking at various options, and good on you for doing that, because building a house is the biggest investment that you will ever make. I get told sometimes that, well, I can build a house twice as big with a much better quality kitchen and a much shinier house than your little sustainable house, and it costs the same or even less. Again, make sure that we're careful about comparing apples with apples, and I guess it comes down to what you value as well. Just go back to that one. Unfortunately, we are able to build pretty crap houses in Australia, and they're pretty cheap. And so comparing a sustainable build with a standard brick veneerial house is something that you need to be very, very careful about. The sustainable house is generally built with purpose, with care. It's been considered. It's built by a builder that gives us stuff, so the quality of that house is actually significant, just not the sustainability aspects, but the actual quality of the build is actually a lot better than a standard build. Be careful. If you do go down the path of designing and building a sustainable home, you start to get choices and options about what you put in that sustainable home, particularly if you're working with a designer or an architect, a very excited architect that suggests gorgeous things. And you get on Instagram and look at taps and copper cladding and lovely, timber cladding, polished concrete. There's some really, really lovely things that you can do in a house. A lot of those things are actually nothing to do with sustainability. They're just nice. And so quite often a criticism levelled at architects is that they blow your dough. I think there needs to be some responsibility taken as well, because it's really important that if you want to build a sustainable home, that you are led and you focus on what it is that's sustainable, not the pretty bits around. Hence, you might be aiming for a green apple, but you get the full cheese board and the wine as well, and that comes at a cost. And on the other side, when you're looking at alternatives, make sure that you ask the right questions, because quite often when people talk about a standard home, the builders talk about square metre rates, and be careful about what is included, or more realistically, what is excluded from those square metre rates. Sometimes things like footings are excluded from square metre rates. Or footings, they're probably just things under the ground and aren't that important. The entire slab, $30,000 to $40,000. Well, if I take $30,000 to $40,000 off your square metre rate, that's pretty good. So again, comparison is really, really important. And of course, when you walk through, say, a Goodhouse or walk through another new build, they might not actually look that different in the surface, but of course underneath, where the important bits are, it is different. So again, be careful about that. So the other thing that I'll just briefly touch on is this fantastic graph. Many of you would have seen this graph before. It was actually generated by Bill Reed, 2007, a long time ago. But I just want to point out that there are a number of different levels of sustainability, and we need to be aware of that. You'll see that in the middle there, it might be a little bit small to read, you're a long way away from the screen, but in the middle there is the concept of sustainable. It's referred to there as 100% less bad, which I kind of like. We need to move past that. We're at the point now where whatever we do as we run around on this massive planet, we need to consider restoration, reconciliation, regenerative design. We need to do better. We need to add value to our sites. We need to generate more power in our homes. So I think that's really important. And then the conventional practice right down the bottom is one step better than breaking the law. That's I guess the alternative. The other brief point I want to make at this slide is we can aim for a level of sustainability or regenerative design, but so much of sustainable living is actually up to us as individuals. I remember doing a study when I was at uni on a range of homes and looking at the fabric of the home, the design of the home, and the energy consumption and how the users use the home. The home that actually used the least amount of energy was actually my Auntie Joan and Uncle Neville's house. And it was a dreadful home. It faced the wrong way. It was leaky. It was under-insulated, single-glazed. But they drove that home hard. And they were very, very frugal with their energy consumption and therefore lived very sustainably. So we can't just put all of our eggs in the sustainable home basket and go, there we go, fixed. So sustainable build, standard build. Let's just look at what we would expect in a sustainable build. Quality construction, more energy produced than used, embodied energy offset, small footprint, minimal active heating, cooling, thermal comfort, healthy living environment, regenerative, productive garden landscape, rainwater, minimum 70% self-sufficient. Happy to talk to you about that number afterwards. Transport considered, standard build constructed to the National Construction Code. So to get the difference between those two, this is the difference on the left, and these are pretty rough numbers and a pretty rough sort of concept, but I wanted to give you some meat to chew. Cost and the benefit. Oversized timber framing I've considered to be an absolute crucial element. And these are elements of Goodhouse and have been for the last sort of 10 years. And a lot of people are doing this now, which is great. 140 studs. Just do it. You can get more insulation in. Got to do it. About $10,000 more in a standard home. We're talking a 180 square metre home here. It's not a lot of money in the grand scheme of the build. Insulation, to go from standard to R4 plus R6 in the ceiling, about $3,000 in a home, raw materials. Not a lot of money, just do it. I'm standing all cross now, I know. Windows, really hard to compare windows, but they're the holes in the house. You have to spend money on windows. And the offerings we have in South Australia now for the UPVC windows, I remember 20 years ago having a conversation with a glazier about what double glazing actually was. So now there are so many options. About $10,000 more, roughly. Solar and storage. Now I'm assuming that the standard home won't have solar and storage, but that's actually becoming more standard now anyway, but let's assume that it hasn't. About $20,000 for a standard solar system and some battery storage, and smart things like smart connections to, car as batteries is something we're sort of investigating now, as well as the idea of the battery driving some of your smart appliances and that sort of thing. Heat pump and hot water system, we've talked about the heat pump. The energy consumption for hot water is massive, and so a massive part of your home. To spend a little bit more, get a really top quality heat pump with a COP of around 5, which is entirely possible now. Rainwater storage, caulking, getting the seal up in the house. It's a simple way of doing that. Lots of silicon. There's a lot of work in that. Build supervision, which sounds weird. You think, well, hang on, if you build a house, it's going to be supervised. Not necessarily. So to actually get to pay a builder, a good builder who actually puts time and effort and energy into supervising a house, that's really important to get the quality of the house, therefore reduce maintenance of the house later on, which is a cost. And design, documentation, and assistance with delivery, using a designer or an architect to help you along the way. It's a lot of money. It's about $70,000 worth of stuff and about $35,000-ish worth of design, documentation, and delivery. $100,000 more? But if you do a slightly less expensive kitchen in one of these homes, and you can weigh things up. You can make it a smaller home, reduce your footprint. Be careful of the platter. So I've got a minute and a half. Operational cost. This is Goodhouse 30, Flinders Park. it was the first house we did with a battery, 2019. Reduced mains water consumption. It's got a 22,500 litre rainwater tank. That's it. That covers them, we're seeing, for around about 70% of the year. It's not a big tank, and that's you know, that's whole of house. That's a lot of money saved. We don't do gas. We don't pay for gas connection, all of that. Forget it. Reduced maintenance costs because of the quality of the bill. Simple things. I'll give you an example. Fascias, barges, none of that's painted. We wrap that in colour bond. Costs a little bit more at the time. Zero maintenance, longevity, good. House. No electricity costs. This is the data from the battery in 2019. You probably can't even see the numbers. I'm sorry, I can barely see them myself. January through to December on the side there. What it basically shows is that there's only 2 months in there, the June and the July, where they're importing more energy than they're exporting. So the balance is there. It's pretty good. Over a year, it's definitely equal. And then I learned, after I got this data, that those sneaky clients went and bought a Nissan Leaf, and those figures there include recharging that Nissan Leaf for that entire year. So that's pretty good. There are lots and lots and lots of other benefits. Transport integration we've talked about, reduced costs there. The general amenity of the internal spaces and the feel and the health and the happiness. Healthy selections, natural wool, low VOC, etc., etc. Food production, smaller house, larger garden. Considered in the design, not just, space left over. Increased functionality. That room there does about 5 things. It probably would have been 5 rooms in a lazy design. Thermal comfort, consideration and connection to site, and resale value. We haven't sold a good house yet, but we'll see. We'll see what they're worth. Thank you.